Before we dive into the story, leave a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The Las Vegas Strip glowed like a river of neon fire against the midnight sky, its pulsing lights reflecting off the glass towers that pierced the darkness. Inside the Bellagio Casino, the air was thick with cigar smoke, perfume, and the metallic chime of slot machines spilling coins. Scarlett Hayes stood at the blackjack table, her heart hammering as she watched the dealer flip her final card. 21. She'd won again, her third hand in a row, and the pile of chips in front of her had grown to a small mountain of red, black, and gold tokens. A cocktail waitress in a sparkling silver dress leaned close, setting down another mojito. Scarlett hadn't ordered it, but she accepted it anyway, her fingers trembling slightly as she lifted the glass to her lips. She wasn't a gambler. Not really. Back home in Denver, she was a culinary school graduate working double shifts at a catering company, saving every penny to open her own small bistro someday. But tonight was different. Tonight she'd been dragged to Vegas by her best friend Mia for a bachelorette weekend, and after 3 drinks and a dare, Scarlett had found herself at this table, betting money she probably shouldn't risk. The man sitting 2 seats down caught her eye. He was impossibly tall, even seated, with broad shoulders filling out a charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. His dark hair was swept back, revealing a sharp jawline and steel blue eyes that watched the cards with the kind of focus usually reserved for surgeons or snipers. When he glanced up and their eyes met, Scarlett felt a jolt run through her chest like she'd touched a live wire. He didn't smile, but something flickered in his expression, a spark of interest, maybe amusement. She looked away quickly, cheeks flushing, and pushed half her chips forward. All in. The dealer raised an eyebrow, but dealt the cards. Scarlett's pulse roared in her ears. She flipped her hand. Bust. 23. The chips vanished, swept away in one efficient motion, and just like that, her little winning streak evaporated into the smoky air. She laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound, and stood up too quickly. The room tilted slightly. Okay, maybe she'd had more than 3 drinks. Excuse me, the man's voice cut through the noise, deep and smooth as aged whiskey. Scarlett turned. He was standing now, towering over her, holding out a single black chip between 2 fingers. You dropped this. She blinked. I didn't. He smiled then, just a slight curve at the corner of his mouth. Consider it a consolation prize. Before she could argue, he placed the chip in her palm, his fingers brushing hers for just a moment. The touch sent a shiver up her arm. You're braver than most people in this room, he said, his gaze steady and unreadable. Betting everything on one hand. I'm not brave, Scarlett replied, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm just bad at math. His laugh was low and genuine, and it made something warm bloom in her chest. I'm Ethan Cross, Scarlett Hayes. They stood there for a beat too long, the noise of the casino fading into a hum around them. Then Mia appeared, grabbing Scarlett's arm with a shriek. There you are. We're going dancing. Come on. Scarlett was pulled away, but not before she glanced back. Ethan was still watching her, hands in his pockets, that faint smile lingering. 2 hours later, Scarlett found herself alone on a balcony overlooking the Strip. The club had been too loud, too crowded, and Mia had disappeared with some guy in a cowboy hat. Scarlett leaned against the railing, the cool night air a relief against her flushed skin. The city below looked like a dream, all glittering lights and impossible promises. Mind if I join you? She turned. Ethan Cross stood in the doorway, holding 2 bottles of water. Scarlett laughed. Are you following me? He stepped onto the balcony, handing her one of the bottles. This city's smaller than it looks. Or maybe we're both terrible at staying in crowded rooms. She accepted the water, grateful. So, Ethan Cross, what do you do when you're not rescuing strangers at blackjack tables? He leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something crisp and expensive. I run a company. Vague. She tilted her head. Let me guess. Tech startup? Hedge fund? Secret agent? He smirked. Close. Real estate development. I build things. Hotels, mostly. Scarlett whistled softly. So you're rich, he shrugged. Money's just a tool, spoken like someone who has a lot of it. And you? What do you do, Scarlett Hayes? I cook, she said simply. I'm a chef. Well, training to be one. Right now, I mostly chop vegetables and pretend not to burn things. His eyes lit up with genuine interest. A chef, that's real skill. Anyone can throw money at a building. Not everyone can create something people actually need. She felt her cheeks warm again, but not from the alcohol this time. You're surprisingly humble for a billionaire. Who said I was a billionaire? Scarlett gestured at his suit, his watch, the effortless confidence that clung to him like a second skin. Everything about you screams money. He laughed again, and she realized she liked the sound. Okay, guilty. But tonight, I'm just a guy who lost at blackjack and met someone interesting. They talked for an hour, maybe more, about food, about cities, about the strange loneliness that came with ambition. Scarlett found herself telling him things she'd never told anyone, how she'd grown up in a trailer park, how her mother had worked 3 jobs to send her to culinary school, how terrified she was that she'd fail and waste it all. Ethan listened, really listened, his full attention on her, like she was the only person in the world. When the silence finally settled between them, it wasn't awkward. It was charged, electric. Scarlett, Ethan said quietly, his voice lower now. I don't usually do this. Do what? He stepped closer. This. And then he kissed her. It wasn't rough or demanding. It was slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing the shape of her lips. Scarlett's hands found his chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt, and she kissed him back with a hunger that surprised her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. Come with me, he whispered. Scarlett's rational mind screamed warnings. She didn't know this man. This was reckless, dangerous. But another part of her, the part that had bet everything at that blackjack table, whispered something else. Live. Just once. Live. She nodded. They barely made it to his suite. The door slammed shut behind them, and then his hands were in her hair, her back against the wall, mouths colliding with desperate urgency. Scarlett had never felt anything like this wild, consuming need that drowned out every cautious voice in her head. Ethan lifted her easily, carrying her to the bed, and the city lights outside the floor-to-ceiling windows cast everything in gold and shadow. Afterward, they lay tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, Scarlett's head on his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat. She should have felt awkward, embarrassed even, but instead she felt weightless, like she'd stepped out of her own life for a few hours and into someone else's dream. Ethan's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. Stay, he murmured, half asleep. Scarlett smiled against his skin. She closed her eyes, just for a moment. When she woke, dawn light was bleeding through the windows, turning the suite pale pink and gold. Ethan was still asleep beside her, one arm draped across her waist, his face softer in sleep than she'd seen it. Scarlett's phone buzzed on the nightstand. 12 missed calls from Mia. 3 texts. Where are you? We're leaving in an hour. Flight at 9 a.m. Reality crashed back in. Scarlett carefully slipped out from under Ethan's arm, gathering her clothes from the floor. She dressed quickly, quietly, her heart aching in a way she didn't expect. She should wake him. Leave her number. Something. But what would she even say? Thanks for the amazing night. Call me if you're ever in Denver. This wasn't real life. This was Vegas, a beautiful, impossible bubble that would pop the second she stepped outside. Scarlett took one last look at him, memorizing the line of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead. Then she slipped out the door and didn't look back. On the flight home, Mia chattered endlessly about the weekend, but Scarlett barely heard her. She stared out the window at the clouds, replaying every moment, every word. She didn't even know his last name. Well, she did. Cross. Ethan Cross. But she hadn't thought to look him up, hadn't wanted to shatter the fantasy with LinkedIn profiles and Google results. It was better this way, she told herself. A perfect memory, untouched by the complications of real life. 3 months later, Scarlett stood in her tiny Denver apartment, staring at her bank account balance on her laptop screen. The number made her stomach twist. She'd been laid off 2 weeks ago when the catering company downsized, and her savings were evaporating faster than she'd thought possible. Rent was due in 5 days. She'd applied to every restaurant, every cafe, every catering gig she could find, but nothing had come through. Desperate, she opened her email and started searching job boards she'd normally never consider. Personal assistant, nanny, house cleaner. Then one listing caught her eye. Private chef needed, live-in position for high-profile client, exceptional pay, discretion required, must start immediately. Scarlett clicked on it, her heart pounding. The salary listed made her blink. Twice. That couldn't be real. She read the requirements. Culinary degree or equivalent experience, ability to accommodate dietary restrictions and preferences, professional demeanor, references required. She met all of it. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was probably a scam, or some weird situation she'd regret. But the number in her bank account stared back at her, daring her to be practical. Scarlett took a breath and hit submit. 2 days later, she got a call. A crisp, professional voice on the other end asked her a series of questions, then scheduled an in-person interview for the next morning at a downtown address. Scarlett barely slept that night. She showed up at the address 15 minutes early, wearing the one professional outfit she owned, a simple black dress and flats. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, with a doorman who checked her name against a list before directing her to the top floor. The elevator opened into a penthouse suite that made her breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, the morning light spilling across marble floors and minimalist furniture that probably cost more than a car. A woman in a tailored suit approached, extending her hand. "Miss Hayes." "I'm Caroline Reeves, Mr. Cross's executive assistant." Scarlett shook her hand, trying to keep her expression neutral even as her mind reeled. Cross. Ethan Cross. No, it couldn't be. This was a common last name. It had to be a coincidence. Caroline led her through the penthouse into a gourmet kitchen that looked like something out of a magazine. Scarlett's fingers itched to touch the professional-grade range, the marble countertops, the copper pots hanging from the ceiling. "This is where you'd be working," Caroline explained. "Mr. Cross has specific dietary preferences, mostly clean eating, high protein, but he also appreciates creativity. He travels frequently, so flexibility is essential." Scarlett nodded, only half listening. Her heart was hammering now. Dread and something else. Hope? Fear? Coiling in her chest. "When will I meet Mr. Cross?" Caroline checked her watch. He should be finishing a call now. "Wait here." She disappeared through a door, leaving Scarlett alone in the gleaming kitchen. Scarlett pressed her palms against the cool marble, trying to steady her breathing. It's not him. It's not him. The door opened. "Scarlett," Caroline called. "Mr. Cross will see you now. Scarlett turned, and the world tilted. Ethan Cross stood in the doorway, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark slacks, his steel blue eyes widening in shock. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them crackled with recognition, disbelief, and something far more complicated. Scarlett felt her face flush hot, then cold. Ethan's jaw tightened, his expression shifting from shock to something unreadable. Caroline glanced between them, confused. "Do you two know each other?" Scarlett opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ethan's gaze locked onto hers, and she saw the same wild tangle of emotions she felt reflected in his eyes. "Yes," he said finally, his voice rough. "We've met." Caroline's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose a fraction, but she maintained her professional composure. "I see. Well, I'll leave you two to discuss the position." She exited with a soft click of the door, and suddenly the massive kitchen felt suffocatingly small. Scarlett couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 3 months. 3 months since that night in Vegas, and she'd convinced herself it was just a beautiful dream, something that existed outside of real life. And now, here he was, standing 10 feet away in a Denver penthouse, looking at her like she was a ghost. "You," Ethan said, the word barely above a whisper. He took a step forward, then stopped himself, running a hand through his hair. "You left." The accusation in his voice stung more than it should have. "I had a flight," Scarlett stammered, hating how weak she sounded. "I didn't want to wake you." Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So you just disappeared. No note, no number. Nothing." What was I supposed to do? Scarlett's defenses flared. "We spent one night together, Ethan." "One night. That doesn't exactly come with relationship obligations." His eyes flashed. "Is that what you think that was to me? Just one night?" Scarlett's heart was racing now, her pulse loud in her ears. What was it supposed to be? Some fairy tale? "You're a billionaire who builds hotels. I'm a chef who can barely pay rent. We live in completely different worlds. And yet, here you are," Ethan said quietly, his gaze pinning her in place. "In my kitchen, applying to be my chef." "The irony isn't lost on me," Scarlett shot back, crossing her arms defensively. "Trust me, if I'd known this was your ad, I never would have applied." Something flickered across his face, hurt, maybe, quickly masked. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell that same crisp cologne, see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. "And now that you know?" Scarlett swallowed hard. "Now I should probably leave." "Don't." The word was firm, almost a command. Scarlett met his eyes, and the intensity there made her knees weak. "Ethan, this is insane. We can't just pretend." "I'm not pretending," he interrupted. "I've thought about you every day for 3 months. Every single day." His confession hit her like a physical blow. Scarlett felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. "That doesn't change anything. We're still from different worlds. Then let's exist in the same one for a while." He closed the final distance between them, his voice dropping. "Stay. Work for me. Not because you need the money, though I know you do. Caroline told me you're overqualified and underemployed, but because maybe we deserve a second chance to figure out what that night meant." Scarlett wanted to say no. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a disaster waiting to happen. You didn't just work for someone you'd slept with. You especially didn't work for someone who made your heart race and your knees weak with a single look. But then she thought about her empty bank account, the overdue rent notice, the dream of her own restaurant slipping further away with each passing day. And underneath all of that, a tiny, dangerous voice whispered, "What if?" "I need to think about it," Scarlett said finally. Ethan nodded slowly, stepping back to give her space, though she could see the tension in his shoulders. Fair enough. Take the day. Caroline will send you the contract details. But Scarlett? She paused at the door, glancing back. I meant what I said. That night wasn't just one night to me. Then why didn't you come find me? The question burst out before she could stop it. Ethan's expression softened. I tried. I called the front desk, asked if they had any information. But you checked in under your friend's name. I didn't even know your last name until Caroline mentioned it this morning. Scarlett's breath caught. He'd looked for her. She nodded once, not trusting her voice, and left. That night, Scarlett sat on her apartment floor, surrounded by bills and job rejection letters. Ethan's contract pulled up on her laptop. The salary was obscene, 3 times what she'd made at the catering company. The benefits included housing, a food stipend, and Sundays off. It was the kind of opportunity chefs dreamed about. But it was also Ethan. Ethan, whose kiss she could still feel, whose voice had haunted her dreams for months, whose presence made her feel reckless and terrified and alive all at once. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Did you take the job yet? Hello, you're living with a billionaire you hooked up with. This is literally a romance novel. Say yes. Scarlett laughed despite herself. Maybe Mia was right. Maybe this was insane. But maybe, just maybe, insane was exactly what she needed. She opened her email and typed quickly before she could change her mind. Mr. Cross, I accept the position. When do I start? His response came in less than a minute. Tomorrow. Welcome home, Scarlett. Home. The word made her chest ache. She closed her laptop and stared at the ceiling. What have I just agreed to? The next morning, Scarlett stood outside Ethan's building with 2 suitcases and a rolling rack of kitchen knives, her palms sweaty despite the cool Denver air. Caroline met her in the lobby, efficient as ever. Mr. Cross is in meetings all day, so I'll show you to your quarters and give you a tour. Your quarters turned out to be a guest suite on the same floor as the penthouse, with a bedroom bigger than her entire apartment, a marble bathroom, and a balcony overlooking the city. Scarlett set her suitcases down slowly, half afraid she'd wake up and find herself back in her cramped studio. Caroline handed her a tablet. This has Mr. Cross's schedule, his dietary preferences, and any upcoming events that require meal planning. He typically eats breakfast at 7 a.m., lunch at 1 p.m., and dinner at 8 p.m., though his hours can be unpredictable. Any questions? Scarlett scanned the notes. He doesn't eat shellfish. Allergy? No, Caroline said. He just doesn't like it. But he's open to most cuisines. He mentioned you were creative. Scarlett felt a flutter of nerves. Okay, I can work with that. Caroline's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Miss Hayes, Mr. Cross doesn't usually take personal recommendations seriously. The fact that he hired you himself, that means something. Before Scarlett could respond, Caroline left, and she was alone in the quiet, luxurious suite. She unpacked slowly, hanging her few dresses in a closet big enough to house a small family, then made her way to the kitchen. The space was even more breathtaking in daylight. Scarlett ran her hands over the counters, opened the Sub-Zero fridge stocked with organic vegetables and premium cuts of meat, examined the spice rack that looked like it had been curated by a Michelin star chef. This was a dream kitchen. Her dream kitchen. And she was going to cook here every day for the man she'd slept with in Vegas. God help me, she muttered. She started with inventory, making notes of what was available, what she'd need to order. Cooking had always been her refuge, the one place where her hands knew exactly what to do, even when her mind was chaos. By the time she heard the elevator ding, she'd prepped ingredients for dinner: a pan-seared salmon with lemon butter, roasted asparagus, and wild rice. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Scarlett took a breath and turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, jacket slung over one arm. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes. But when he saw her, something in his expression eased. "You're really here," he said quietly. "I'm really here," Scarlett confirmed, wiping her hands on a towel. "Are you hungry?" "Starving." He moved into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. "What are you making?" "Salmon, if that's all right." Ethan's lips curved into the faintest smile. "It's perfect." They fell into a strange, tentative rhythm. Scarlett cooked while Ethan watched, occasionally asking questions about her process, her training. She found herself relaxing, the familiar motions of chopping, searing, seasoning grounding her. When she plated the dish and set it in front of him, Ethan took a bite and closed his eyes. "God," he murmured, "this is incredible." Scarlett felt a flush of pride. "It's just salmon. It's not just anything." He looked up at her, his gaze warm. "You have a gift, Scarlett." She didn't know what to say to that, so she turned back to the stove, busying herself with cleaning up. But she felt his eyes on her, and the weight of that attention made her skin tingle. After dinner, Ethan lingered in the kitchen while Scarlett finished wiping down the counters. "You don't have to stay," she said, not looking at him. "I want to." Scarlett paused, her hand stilling on the marble. "Ethan." He stood, moving closer. "I know this is complicated. I know we're navigating something neither of us planned. But I don't want you to feel uncomfortable here. This is your space too now." She finally met his eyes. "What do you want from me, Ethan? What is this really about?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I don't know. All I know is that I haven't stopped thinking about you since Vegas. And now that you're here, I don't want to waste the chance to figure out what that means." Scarlett's heart hammered. "And if it means nothing? Then at least we'll know." His voice was steady, but she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "But I don't think it will." The air between them thickened, charged with everything unsaid. Scarlett knew she should step back, put distance between them, keep this professional. But her body betrayed her, leaning forward just slightly, drawn to him like gravity. "Ethan," she whispered, "I'm scared." "Me too." And then he kissed her, soft and tentative, like he was asking permission. Scarlett melted into it, her hands finding his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. This time there was no urgency, no desperate heat, just warmth, steady and all-consuming. When they broke apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he murmured. "Not as my chef, just stay." Scarlett closed her eyes. "I'm already here." "I know, but stay." She nodded. And in that moment, the line between employer and employee, between past and present, blurred into something neither of them could name. The first week passed in a haze of routines and restraint. Scarlett woke early each morning, slipping into the kitchen before dawn to prep breakfast. By the time Ethan emerged from his bedroom suite, dressed in sharp suits that made her pulse skip, she had fresh coffee brewing and something warm waiting on the counter. Blueberry pancakes with maple syrup, avocado toast with poached eggs, steel-cut oats with caramelized bananas. He never failed to compliment her, his steel blue eyes softening with each bite. "You're spoiling me," he said one morning. Fork paused midway to his mouth. "That's literally my job," Scarlett replied, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Ethan shook his head. "No, your job is to cook. Spoiling me is something else entirely." She felt heat creep up her neck and turned away, busying herself with rinsing dishes. The problem was that the lines between professional and personal were blurring faster than she could draw them back. Ethan didn't treat her like an employee. He asked about her day, her dreams, her family. He lingered after meals, leaning against the counter with a glass of wine, talking about real estate deals and childhood memories and the strange loneliness that came with success. And every night, when he said goodnight and disappeared into his suite, Scarlett lay awake in her own bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering the way his lips had felt against hers. On Friday evening, Ethan came home earlier than usual, his tie already loosened, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "Cancel dinner plans," he said. "We're going out." Scarlett blinked. "I'm your chef. I don't have dinner plans except to make you dinner." He grinned. "Then it's settled. Get dressed. Somewhere nice. I'll be ready in 20 minutes. Before she could protest, he disappeared into his room, leaving Scarlett standing in the kitchen, bewildered and slightly exhilarated. She raced to her suite, throwing open her closet. She didn't have much, a few simple dresses, her one professional outfit. But tucked in the back was a dark green dress she'd bought on a whim years ago, fitted and elegant, the kind of thing she'd never had an occasion to wear. Tonight felt like an occasion. She showered quickly, dried her hair, and slipped into the dress. It hugged her curves in a way that made her self-conscious, but when she checked the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked confident, beautiful even. When she emerged, Ethan was waiting by the elevator, dressed in dark slacks and a navy button-down, no tie. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Scarlett," he breathed. "You look stunning." She flushed. "It's just a dress. It's not just anything with you." The words echoed his compliment about her cooking, and something warm bloomed in her chest. They took his car, a sleek black Audi, and drove through the city as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Scarlett had no idea where they were going until Ethan pulled up in front of a small, unassuming building with a hand-painted sign. "Marcello's." "This is my favorite restaurant in the city," Ethan said as they walked inside. "I wanted you to see what inspired me to hire a personal chef in the first place." The interior was cozy and intimate, all exposed brick and candlelight. A man with silver hair and a wide smile greeted Ethan with a hug. "Ethan, my friend." "And who is this Bellissima?" "This is Scarlett," Ethan said, his hand resting lightly on her lower back. "She's an incredible chef." Marcello's eyes sparkled. "Ah, a colleague. Then you must try my osso buco." "It is, how do you say, life-changing." They were seated at a corner table, and over the next 2 hours, Scarlett experienced food that made her want to weep. Every dish was a revelation, rich and perfectly balanced, each bite a testament to decades of skill. "This is incredible," Scarlett said, savoring a forkful of risotto. "I can see why you love this place." Ethan watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I used to come here when I first moved to Denver. I didn't know anyone, and Marcello treated me like family. Food has a way of doing that, connecting people." She met his eyes. "Is that why you wanted a personal chef? To recreate this?" "Partly." He leaned back, swirling his wine. "But also because I'm tired of eating alone. I wanted someone who understood that food isn't just fuel. It's art, memory, love." Scarlett's breath caught at the last word, but Ethan didn't seem to notice, taking another sip of wine. When they finally left, the city was alive with nightlife, people spilling out of bars and restaurants. Ethan drove slowly, the windows down, cool air rushing in. "Thank you for tonight," Scarlett said quietly. "I needed this." "So did I." He glanced at her. "You know, I've been thinking. What if we did this more often?" Scarlett frowned. "Did what?" "Go out. Explore the city. You've been cooped up in that kitchen all week. You deserve to see more than just my penthouse." She smiled. "Are you asking me on dates, Mr. Cross?" Ethan's lips curved. "Would that be so terrible?" "Yes," she wanted to say. Because every moment I spend with you makes it harder to remember this is temporary. But instead, she said, I guess I could be convinced. Good. He pulled up in front of the building, and they rode the elevator in comfortable silence. When they reached the penthouse, Ethan walked her to her suite door. Scarlett, he said softly. Yeah? He hesitated, his hand lifting as if to touch her face, then dropping. I'm glad you're here. Me too, she admitted, and she meant it. That night, Scarlett lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The way Ethan had looked at her across the table, the warmth in his voice when he said her name, the almost touch at her door. She was in trouble. Deep, dangerous trouble. Because she was starting to fall for him, and she had no idea if he felt the same way, or if she was just convenient, the girl who cooked his meals and reminded him of a night in Vegas. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Still awake? She hesitated, then typed back. Can't sleep. A pause. Then, me neither. Want to talk? Scarlett bit her lip, then got out of bed, pulling on a robe. She found Ethan on the balcony, leaning against the railing, the city lights glowing below. He turned when he heard her, a soft smile on his face. Couldn't stay away? She leaned beside him. You texted first. Fair point. They stood in silence for a moment, the cool night air swirling around them. Ethan finally spoke. I meant what I said earlier, about going out more. I want you to feel trapped here. I don't feel trapped, Scarlett said. I feel she paused, searching for the right word. Like I'm in a dream I'm not sure I deserve. Ethan turned to face her fully. You deserve everything, Scarlett. Don't ever doubt that. His gaze was so intense it stole her breath. She wanted to kiss him, wanted to close the distance and let herself fall completely. But fear held her back. What if this was just proximity? What if he only wanted her because she was here, convenient and familiar? As if reading her mind, Ethan reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I know what you're thinking, that this is too fast, too complicated, and maybe it is. But I don't care. Scarlett, I care, she whispered. I care too much, and that terrifies me. Why? Because you're my employer. Because we barely know each other. Because what if this falls apart and I lose everything? Ethan's hand cupped her cheek. Then we'll be careful. We'll take it slow. But don't ask me to pretend I don't feel this. Scarlett's resolve crumbled. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. Okay. Slow. He smiled, and it was the most genuine, unguarded expression she'd seen from him. Slow. That night, they stayed on the balcony until the sky began to lighten, talking about everything and nothing. Two people suspended between what was and what could be. Slow, it turned out, was harder than either of them anticipated. Over the next 2 weeks, Scarlett and Ethan fell into a rhythm that felt less like employer and employee, and more like something dangerously close to domestic bliss. Mornings began with coffee and quiet conversation. Evenings ended with wine and laughter on the balcony. And in between, Scarlett cooked meals that Ethan devoured with the kind of appreciation that made her heart swell. But they kept their hands to themselves. Mostly. There were moments, brushes of fingers when Ethan reached for a plate, the warmth of his hand on her lower back when they walked through the city, the way he watched her cook with an intensity that made her skin flush, where the restraint felt like a physical ache. One Saturday morning, Ethan surprised her by appearing in the kitchen with a backpack and hiking boots. Get dressed, he said. We're going on an adventure. Scarlett raised an eyebrow. I'm your chef, not your hiking buddy. Today you're both. Come on, the mountains are incredible this time of year. She laughed but complied, changing into jeans and sneakers. An hour later, they were driving out of the city, the buildings giving way to rolling hills and pine forests. Ethan had rolled the windows down, and the scent of fresh air and earth filled the car. Scarlett tilted her face to the sun, feeling lighter than she had in months. "This was your plan all along, wasn't it?" she teased. "Get me out of the kitchen so I'd stop feeding you vegetables." Ethan grinned. "You caught me. I'm actually taking you to a secret cabin where I'll hold you hostage and force you to make me pancakes forever." She laughed. "Sounds like a decent retirement plan." They hiked up a trail that wound through dense forest, the path dappled with sunlight. Ethan was surprisingly patient, stopping whenever Scarlett wanted to take photos or examine a wildflower. At one point, she slipped on a loose rock, and he caught her instantly, his hand steadying her waist. "Careful," he murmured, his face close to hers. Scarlett's breath hitched. "Thanks." They stood like that for a beat too long, the forest quiet around them except for the distant call of a bird. Then Ethan released her, clearing his throat, and they continued up the trail. At the summit, the view was breathtaking. The city sprawled below them, tiny and distant, framed by mountains and endless sky. Ethan pulled out a blanket and a thermos of hot chocolate from his backpack, and they sat side by side, shoulders touching. "This is where I come when I need to think," Ethan said quietly, "when the pressure of work gets too much. It reminds me that there's more to life than board meetings and profit margins." Scarlett sipped her hot chocolate, savoring the warmth. "I get that. Cooking does that for me. It's the one thing I can control when everything else feels chaotic." Ethan glanced at her. "Do you still dream about opening your own restaurant?" "Every day," she smiled wistfully. "I have this vision of a small place, maybe 20 tables, where I can cook food that makes people feel something. Not fancy Michelin star stuff, just real, honest food that reminds them of home." "That's beautiful," Ethan said. "And it'll happen." "I know it will. How can you be so sure?" "Because you're the most determined person I've ever met." He turned to face her fully. "Scarlett, when you walked into my penthouse that day, I thought I was dreaming. And every day since, you've proven that you're even more remarkable than I remembered." Scarlett's chest tightened. "Ethan, you don't have to say anything." He reached out, his fingers brushing hers. "I just wanted you to know." They sat in silence, hands intertwined, until the sun began to dip toward the horizon. On the drive back, Scarlett felt a shift inside her, a loosening of the fear that had kept her guarded. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could navigate the complications together. But the universe had other plans. That evening, as Scarlett was prepping dinner, her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Hello?" "Scarlett Hayes?" a crisp female voice said. "This is Jennifer Lang from Culinary Arts magazine. We're doing a feature on up-and-coming chefs, and your name was recommended by one of your former instructors. We'd love to interview you." Scarlett's heart leaped. Culinary Arts was one of the most prestigious publications in the industry. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. We're particularly interested in your current position. Our source mentioned you're working as a private chef for Ethan Cross, the real estate mogul. Is that correct?" Scarlett's excitement faltered. "Yes, but..." Before she could finish, Jennifer continued. "We'd love to feature that angle. Billionaire hires unknown chef. It's a great story. We could schedule the interview for next week if you're available." Scarlett's mind raced. This was an incredible opportunity, the kind of exposure that could launch her career. But it also meant putting her relationship with Ethan under a microscope. "I'll need to think about it," Scarlett stammered. "Of course. I'll email you the details. Looking forward to hearing from you." The line went dead. Scarlett stood frozen, phone in hand. Ethan walked in, loosening his tie. "Something smells amazing." What are you making? Scarlett forced a smile. Just roasted chicken. Nothing special. Ethan frowned, stepping closer. What's wrong? Nothing, Scarlett. His voice was gentle but firm. Talk to me. She sighed, setting down the phone. I just got a call from Culinary Arts magazine. They want to interview me for a feature on up-and-coming chefs. Ethan's face lit up. Scarlett, that's incredible. Why do you look upset? Because Scarlett bit her lip. They want to focus on the fact that I work for you. They think it's a great angle. Billionaire and his chef. Ethan's expression shifted, understanding dawning. And you're worried about what that means for us. Yes, she met his eyes. If I do this, our relationship, whatever it is, becomes public. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, This is your career, Scarlett. Your dream. I won't let my life complicate that. Maybe we should keep things professional until after the interview. Scarlett's heart sank. You mean pretend the last few weeks didn't happen? His voice was calm, but she could see the tension in his jaw. Just until you figure out what you want. Scarlett wanted to scream, to tell him that she already knew what she wanted. But fear won. Okay, she said quietly. Professional. Ethan nodded once, his expression unreadable. I'll let you finish dinner. He disappeared into his office, and Scarlett stood alone in the kitchen, tears stinging her eyes. What have I just done? Professional turned out to be torture. Over the next week, Ethan and Scarlett moved through the penthouse like polite strangers. Meals were prepared, and eaten in near silence. Conversation stayed surface level. The warmth that had defined their mornings vanished, replaced by a cold formality that made Scarlett's chest ache. Ethan threw himself into work, leaving early and returning late. When he was home, he stayed in his office, the door closed. Scarlett cooked elaborate meals, hoping to draw him out, but he only offered brief compliments before retreating again. She told herself this was for the best, that protecting her career meant protecting her future. But at night, lying alone in her suite, she felt the weight of the distance between them like a physical loss. The interview was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Scarlett spent the morning in a state of nervous energy, changing outfits 3 times and rehearsing answers to potential questions. When Jennifer Lang arrived, she was exactly what Scarlett expected, polished, sharp-eyed, and relentlessly professional. They sat in the penthouse living room, a photographer snapping pictures, while Jennifer asked questions about Scarlett's training, her philosophy on food, her goals. And then the questions shifted. So, Scarlett, Jennifer said, leaning forward, what's it like working for someone like Ethan Cross? He's very professional, Scarlett replied carefully, and he appreciates good food. But there must be more to it than that. You're living in his penthouse, cooking his meals every day. That's a level of intimacy most chefs don't experience with their clients. Scarlett's pulse quickened. It's just a job. A very unique job, Jennifer pressed. Come on, give us something. What's he like behind closed doors? Human, Scarlett said firmly. He's human, just like anyone else. Jennifer smiled, but her eyes were calculating. All right, let's talk about your future. Do you see yourself staying in this position long term, or is this a stepping stone to something bigger? Both, Scarlett said. I'm learning a lot here, and Mr. Cross has been incredibly supportive. But yes, I do hope to open my own restaurant someday. And would he invest in that dream? Jennifer's tone was light, but the implication was clear. Scarlett stiffened. I wouldn't presume to ask. You wouldn't have to. From what I understand, Ethan Cross doesn't hire people unless he sees potential. Maybe he sees more than just culinary talent. The insinuation hung in the air. Scarlett forced a smile. "I think we're done here." Jennifer raised an eyebrow, but signaled to the photographer. They packed up quickly, and Scarlett showed them to the elevator, her hands trembling. As soon as the doors closed, she sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. That had been a disaster. When Ethan came home that evening, Scarlett was in the kitchen, stress cooking a 3-course meal she had no appetite for. "How did it go?" he asked, his tone careful. Scarlett didn't look up. "Fine." "Just fine?" She slammed a pot onto the stove, harder than necessary. "She implied that you're sleeping with me, that you hired me because we hooked up in Vegas, and I couldn't even defend us because we've been pretending there's nothing between us." Ethan went very still. "Scarlett, I'm tired of this, Ethan." She finally turned to face him. "I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of acting like I don't care about you when I think about you every second of every day. And I'm terrified that I just ruined my career because I couldn't lie convincingly enough." Scarlett Ethan stepped forward, but she held up a hand. "No. Let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know what we are. I don't know if this is real or if I'm just some rebound from your lonely billionaire life. But I know I can't keep doing this. I can't keep cooking for you and sitting across from you and pretending my heart doesn't break every time you walk away. You think this is easy for me?" Ethan's voice was rough. "You think I haven't been going insane this week?" "Then why did you pull away?" Scarlett demanded. "Why did you agree to pretend?" "Because I was trying to protect you." Ethan's composure cracked. "You said your career mattered. You said you weren't ready for this to be public. I thought I was doing what you wanted." "I was scared." Scarlett's voice broke. "I've spent my whole life being careful, playing it safe. And then you came along and made me want to be reckless. But I didn't know if you felt the same or if I was just convenient." "Convenient?" Ethan closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face. "Scarlett, you've been anything but convenient. You've turned my entire life upside down. I haven't been able to focus on work. I haven't been able to think about anything except you." Then why Ethan kissed her, silencing her question. It was fierce and desperate, months of restraint shattering in an instant. Scarlett melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I'm in love with you," he whispered. "I've been in love with you since Vegas, maybe even before that. Maybe the moment you smiled at me across that blackjack table." Scarlett's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. God, I love you so much it terrifies me. Then let's be terrified together." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a claim. They stood in the kitchen, wrapped in each other, the city lights glowing through the windows. For the first time in weeks, Scarlett felt like she could breathe. "I'm sorry," Ethan murmured. "I thought I was protecting you, but I was just protecting myself. I was afraid you'd realize I wasn't worth the risk." "You're worth everything," Scarlett said fiercely. "Don't ever doubt that." They spent the rest of the evening on the couch, tangled together, talking about everything they'd been too afraid to say. Ethan told her about his fears of failing, of never being enough. Scarlett confessed her terror of ending up like her mother, working herself to the bone and still coming up short. And somewhere in the honesty, they built something stronger than the pretense that had nearly torn them apart. That night, Ethan walked Scarlett to her suite, his hand warm in hers. "Stay with me," he said quietly. "Not here. In my room." Scarlett's heart raced. "Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything." She nodded, and he led her to his suite. They made love slowly, tenderly, every touch a reassurance that this was real. And afterward, lying in Ethan's arms, Scarlett finally felt like she was home. The morning after changed everything. Scarlett woke, tangled in Ethan's sheets, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a moment, she thought she'd dreamed it all. Then Ethan's arm tightened around her waist, pulling her closer, and she smiled against his chest. "Good morning," his voice rumbled, rough with sleep. "Morning," she murmured. He kissed the top of her head. "I could get used to this." Scarlett tilted her face up to look at him. "Me too." They stayed in bed longer than they should have, wrapped in each other, trading lazy kisses and whispered confessions. Eventually, Scarlett's stomach growled loudly, and Ethan laughed. "Guess I should feed my chef." "Your chef is off duty this morning," Scarlett declared. "You're making breakfast." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I don't cook." "Then today's the day you learn." She dragged him out of bed, both of them still in pajamas, and into the kitchen. Ethan stood helplessly in front of the stove while Scarlett directed him like a drill sergeant. "Crack the eggs into the bowl." "No, not like that. You're getting shells everywhere?" Ethan fumbled, cursing under his breath, and Scarlett laughed so hard she had to lean against the counter for support. "I'm a billionaire CEO," Ethan said indignantly. "I run a multi-million-dollar company. I think I can crack an egg." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Scarlett teased. By the time they sat down to eat, the scrambled eggs were slightly burnt, the toast was uneven, and Scarlett was pretty sure Ethan had used salt instead of sugar in the coffee. But it was perfect. "This is officially the worst breakfast I've ever had," Scarlett said, grinning. Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You're welcome." She threw a piece of toast at him, and he caught it, laughing. That morning set the tone for the weeks that followed. They stopped pretending, stopped holding back. Ethan made it clear to Caroline and the rest of his staff that Scarlett wasn't just his chef, she was his partner. Scarlett moved her things into his suite, and every night they fell asleep wrapped around each other. But happiness, Scarlett was learning, had a way of inviting trouble. The article from Culinary Arts came out on a Wednesday. Scarlett had almost forgotten about it. So when Ethan appeared in the kitchen waving a magazine with a grim expression, her stomach dropped. "Please tell me it's not bad," she said. "It's worse than bad." He handed her the magazine. The cover featured a glamorous photo of a famous chef, but inside, Scarlett's feature took up 4 glossy pages. The headline made her blood run cold. "Cooking Up Romance: How One Chef Landed a Billionaire in a Dream Job." The article was a hatchet job, implying that Scarlett had used her looks and a one-night stand to secure her position. It painted Ethan as a lonely, desperate billionaire, and Scarlett as an opportunist. Jennifer Lang had twisted every careful word Scarlett had said into something sordid. Scarlett sank into a chair, the magazine slipping from her hands. "Oh my God." Ethan crouched in front of her, his hands on her knees. "Hey, look at me." She couldn't. Tears blurred her vision. "My career is over. Everyone will think no one. Who matters will think anything." Ethan's voice was fierce. "This is garbage journalism, and anyone with half a brain will see that." But Scarlett shook her head. "You don't understand. I've worked my whole life to be taken seriously, and now I'm just the chef who slept her way into a job. That's not what you are." Ethan gripped her hands. "You're talented. You're brilliant. And I don't care what some hack writer says." "I care," Scarlett whispered. Her phone started buzzing incessantly. Texts, calls, notifications flooding in. She silenced it and stood, pacing the kitchen. "I need to fix this. I need to put out a statement or—" "Scarlett, stop!" Ethan caught her arm gently. "Let me handle this. You shouldn't have to." "No." He pulled her close. "You've been handling everything alone for too long. Let me protect you. Just this once." Scarlett wanted to argue, but the exhaustion, the weight of everything, crushed her. "Okay." Ethan called Caroline, who arrived within the hour with a PR team. They worked quickly. drafting a statement that emphasized Scarlett's credentials, Ethan's respect for her talent, and the irrelevance of their personal relationship to her professional skills. But the damage was done. Online comments were brutal. Culinary forums debated whether Scarlett was a real chef or just arm candy. Scarlett stopped reading after the 10th comment calling her a gold digger. That night, she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She sat on the balcony, staring at the city, feeling like she'd lost something essential. Ethan found her there, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Talk to me," he said softly. Scarlett shook her head. "There's nothing to say. There's everything to say. You haven't spoken since this afternoon. I don't know what to say, Ethan." She looked at him, her eyes red. "I thought I could have both, you and my career. But maybe that was naive. You can have both. Not like this." Scarlett's voice broke. "Every opportunity I get now will be tainted. People will always wonder if I earned it, or if you handed it to me. Then we'll prove them wrong." Ethan's jaw was set, determined. "You'll open your restaurant, and it'll be so incredible that no one will question your talent. You'll just buy me a restaurant?" "That's exactly what they'll say." "I'm not buying you anything." He cupped her face. "But I'll invest in you if you'll let me. Not because you're my girlfriend, but because you're a damn good chef and a smart businesswoman." Scarlett wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. "What if I fail?" "Then you'll try again." He kissed her forehead. "I believe in you, Scarlett, even if you don't believe in yourself right now." His faith steadied her, just a little. Days turned into weeks. The online chatter faded as the news cycle moved on. Scarlett threw herself into work, cooking with a ferocity that bordered on obsessive. Ethan gave her space, but never let her retreat entirely, coaxing her out for walks, for dinners, for quiet moments on the balcony where they didn't have to talk. Slowly, Scarlett began to heal. And then, on a rainy Saturday morning, Ethan woke her with a kiss. "Get dressed. We're going somewhere." "Where?" "You'll see." They drove through the city, rain streaking the windows, until Ethan pulled up in front of a small brick building in a neighborhood Scarlett loved. Tree-lined streets, local shops, the kind of place where people knew each other's names. Ethan led her to the door and handed her a key. "What is this?" Scarlett asked, her heart pounding. "Your restaurant." Scarlett stared at him. "Ethan." "Before you panic," he said quickly. "This isn't a gift. It's an investment. I've set up an LLC. You'll own 80%. I'll own 20, enough to help with funding, but not enough to control anything." "This is your dream, Scarlett. I just want to help you build it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She looked at the building, then back at Ethan. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I love you," he said simply. "And because you deserve to have everything you've ever wanted." Scarlett threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." They spent the rest of the day walking through the empty space, Scarlett's mind already racing with ideas. A cozy dining room with mismatched vintage chairs, an open kitchen so diners could watch her cook, a chalkboard menu that changed daily. By the time they left, Scarlett felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. That night, lying in bed, Ethan traced patterns on her shoulder. "What are you going to call it?" Scarlett smiled. "I don't know yet. Take your time. You'll know when it's right." She kissed him, slow and sweet. "I love you. I love you too." And for the first time since the article, Scarlett believed that maybe, just maybe, they could have it all. 6 months later, Scarlett stood in the middle of her restaurant, now christened Ember, and marveled at how far she'd come. The space had transformed from a dusty, forgotten building into a warm, inviting haven. Edison bulbs hung from exposed beams, casting a golden glow over reclaimed wood tables. The open kitchen gleamed with stainless steel and copper pots, and the scent of roasting garlic and fresh bread filled the air. Opening night was in 3 days, and Scarlett was equal parts terrified and exhilarated. "You're going to pace a hole in the floor," Ethan said, leaning against the doorway with a smile. Scarlett stopped mid-stride. "I'm not pacing. I'm strategically walking to make sure everything's perfect. It's already perfect." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "You've worked yourself half to death for this. Now you need to trust that it's ready." "I just want everything to go smoothly," Scarlett murmured against his chest. "It will. And even if it doesn't, you'll handle it. You always do." His confidence in her was unwavering, and it steadied her more than he knew. That evening, Mia flew in from Vegas, bursting through the restaurant door with a squeal. "Scarlett, this place is amazing." She spun in a circle, taking in every detail. "I can't believe you did this." Scarlett hugged her friend tightly. "I couldn't have done it without Ethan." "Speaking of," Mia waggled her eyebrows, "when's the wedding?" Scarlett laughed. "Slow down. We've only been officially together for 6 months. Please. That man looks at you like you hung the moon. I give it 6 more months before he proposes." Ethan appeared from the kitchen, carrying a tray of appetizers. "Did I hear my name?" Mia grinned. "I was just telling Scarlett she should lock you down before some other chef steals you." "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan said, his eyes on Scarlett. "Even if the food here wasn't incredible, which it is, I'd stay for the chef." Scarlett's cheeks flushed, and Mia sighed dramatically. "You two are disgustingly cute. I love it." They spent the evening taste-testing dishes and laughing over stories from Vegas, that wild weekend that had started everything. At one point, Scarlett looked around the table at Mia's infectious energy and Ethan's steady presence, and felt a swell of gratitude so strong it brought tears to her eyes. "You okay?" Ethan asked quietly. She nodded. "Just happy." Opening night arrived in a whirlwind of nerves and adrenaline. Scarlett had invited food critics, local bloggers, and friends, along with a handful of regulars from the neighborhood who'd stopped by during construction to wish her luck. The dining room filled quickly, and soon every table was occupied. Scarlett moved through the kitchen like a conductor leading an orchestra, calling out orders, adjusting seasonings, plating dishes with precision. Her small team, 2 line cooks, and a sous chef she'd trained herself, worked in perfect harmony. Ethan sat at a corner table with Caroline and a few business associates, but his eyes kept drifting to the kitchen, watching Scarlett command her domain with confidence and grace. Halfway through service, a food critic from the Denver Post arrived, a woman named Helen Park, known for her brutal honesty. Scarlett's hands trembled slightly as she plated Helen's entree, a pan-seared duck breast with cherry gastrique and roasted root vegetables. This is it, she thought. Make or break. When Helen took her first bite, her expression was unreadable. Scarlett held her breath, watching from the kitchen window. Then Helen smiled, a genuine warm smile, and took another bite. Scarlett exhaled, her heart soaring. By the end of the night, the kitchen was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos Scarlett thrived in. Orders kept coming. Plates went out perfectly timed, and the dining room buzzed with laughter and conversation. When the last guest left, Scarlett collapsed into a chair, exhausted but elated. Her team cheered, clapping her on the back, and Ethan appeared with a bottle of champagne. "To Scarlett," he said, popping the cork. "The most talented chef I know, and the strongest woman I've ever met." They toasted, and Scarlett felt tears prick her eyes again. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me." "Always," Ethan said. The next morning, Scarlett woke to her phone buzzing incessantly. She grabbed it groggily, expecting messages from friends. Instead, Her screen was flooded with notifications. Helen Park's review had posted overnight. Scarlett's hands shook as she opened it. Ember. A star is born. Scarlett Hayes has created something truly special. Her food is bold, yet comforting, innovative, yet rooted in tradition. Every dish tells a story, and every bite is a revelation. This is a chef to watch, and a restaurant that Denver is lucky to have. Scarlett read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Ethan stirred beside her. Good tears or bad tears? Good, she choked out. So good. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her temple. Told you. The success of Ember exceeded every expectation. Within weeks, reservations were booked months in advance. Food bloggers raved. Local news ran features. And Scarlett, once dismissed as a billionaire's arm candy, was celebrated as one of Denver's most exciting culinary talents. But with success came new challenges. The hours were brutal, the pressure relentless. Scarlett often worked late into the night, tweaking menus, training staff, handling logistics. Ethan supported her in every way he could, but there were nights when they barely saw each other. One evening, Scarlett came home past midnight, her feet aching, her chef's coat stained with grease. Ethan was waiting on the couch, a glass of wine in hand. "Rough night?" he asked. "Exhausting," she admitted, collapsing beside him. "But good. We're fully booked for the next 2 months. That's incredible." He handed her the wine. "But you need to take care of yourself, too." "I'm fine," Scarlett said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. "Scarlett," Ethan's tone was gentle but firm. "You've been running yourself ragged. When's the last time you took a day off?" She opened her mouth to answer but couldn't remember. "Exactly," Ethan said. "I'm not saying slow down. I know how much this means to you, but you can't pour from an empty cup." She leaned against him, exhaustion seeping into her bones. "I just don't want to mess this up." "You won't," he kissed her hair. "But you need balance. Let me help." "How?" "Hire another sous chef. Delegate more." And he pulled her onto his lap, his arms wrapping around her. "Take 1 day a week just for us. No restaurant. No work. Just you and me." Scarlett looked up at him, her heart full. "You really do love me, don't you?" "More than I ever thought possible," Ethan said. "So yes, I'll keep saying it until you believe it." "I believe it," she whispered. "And I love you too." They sat like that for a long time, the city glowing outside the windows. 2 people who'd found each other against all odds and built something real. A year after Ember's opening, Scarlett had found her rhythm. She'd hired a second sous chef, a young woman named Tessa, who reminded Scarlett of herself a few years ago. Hungry, talented, and determined. With Tessa handling more of the day-to-day operations, Scarlett finally had time to breathe. She and Ethan fell into a new routine. Sundays were sacred, reserved entirely for each other. They explored the city, tried new restaurants, hiked in the mountains, or simply stayed in bed all day, trading lazy kisses and talking about everything and nothing. One Sunday morning, Ethan surprised her with a road trip. "Pack a bag," he said. "We're going somewhere." "Where?" Scarlett asked, amused. "You'll see." They drove for hours, the city giving way to small towns and rolling farmland. Scarlett dozed off against the window, waking when Ethan gently shook her shoulder. "We're here." She blinked, looking around. They were parked in front of a charming farmhouse, white with blue shutters, surrounded by fields of wildflowers. "Ethan, where are we?" He smiled, that rare, unguarded smile she loved. "This is where I grew up." Scarlett's eyes widened. "Seriously?" He nodded. "I haven't been back in years. But I wanted you to see it." They spent the afternoon walking the property. Ethan showed her the barn where he used to hide as a kid, the creek where he'd learned to fish, the old oak tree he'd climbed 100 times. Scarlett watched him transform, the cold CEO facade melting away to reveal the boy he'd been, curious and adventurous and full of dreams. "Why did you leave?" Scarlett asked as they sat on the porch steps, the sun setting in shades of pink and orange. "My father wanted me to take over the farm," Ethan said. "But I wanted more. I wanted to build things, to see the world. We fought about it for years. Eventually, I left, and we barely spoke after that." Scarlett took his hand. "Do you regret it?" "Some days," he admitted. "My father passed away 5 years ago, and I never got to tell him I understood why he was so hard on me. He just wanted me to appreciate what we had, but I was too stubborn." "You weren't stubborn," Scarlett said gently. "You were following your dreams, just like he followed his." Ethan looked at her, his eyes soft. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. I just love you." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and when they pulled apart, Scarlett saw something shift in his expression, a decision settling into place. "Scarlett," he said, his voice steady. "Yeah? I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Her breath caught. "Ethan, I know we said we'd take things slow, and maybe this isn't the perfect moment, but I don't care." He stood, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, and dropped to one knee. Scarlett's hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "Scarlett Hayes," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "You walked into my life when I least expected it, and you changed everything. You're brilliant and brave, and you make me want to be a better man. I don't want to spend another day without you. Will you marry me?" Scarlett couldn't speak. She nodded frantically, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, yes, of course. Yes." Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, a simple, elegant band with a single diamond, and pulled her into his arms. They stood on that porch, wrapped around each other, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to appear. "I can't believe this is real," Scarlett whispered. "It's real," Ethan said, kissing her forehead. "And it's ours." They spent that night in the farmhouse, making love under the quilts Ethan's mother had sewn, surrounded by memories and the promise of a future they'd build together. When they drove back to Denver the next morning, Scarlett couldn't stop staring at the ring on her finger, the light catching the diamond and throwing tiny rainbows across the dashboard. "Mia's going to lose her mind," Scarlett said, grinning. Ethan laughed. "I'm counting on it." The engagement sparked a flurry of excitement. Mia screamed so loudly over the phone that Scarlett had to hold it away from her ear. Caroline sent a bouquet of flowers so large it barely fit through the door, and Tessa organized a surprise party at Ember, complete with champagne and a cake decorated with tiny edible replicas of Scarlett and Ethan. But amid the celebration, Scarlett felt a flicker of anxiety. Planning a wedding, running a restaurant, managing the constant scrutiny that came with being engaged to a billionaire, it was overwhelming. One night, lying in bed, she voiced her fears. "What if people think I'm only marrying you for your money?" Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "Do you care what people think?" Scarlett hesitated. "I shouldn't." "But I do." "Then let's elope." Scarlett blinked. "What?" Ethan's expression was serious. "No big wedding, no press. Just you, me, and a courthouse. Or a beach, wherever you want." "You'd do that?" He cupped her face. "Scarlett, I don't need a spectacle. I just need you." She kissed him, her heart swelling. But as much as she loved the idea, she shook her head. "No, I want to do this right. I want our friends and family there. I want to celebrate. Because I'm not ashamed of loving you, and I'm not going to hide." Ethan smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "Then we'll do it your way." They planned a small, intimate wedding, just 50 guests, at a vineyard outside the city. Scarlett designed the menu herself, a 5-course meal that showcased everything she'd learned and loved about cooking. The day of the wedding, Scarlett stood in front of a mirror, smoothing down the simple lace dress she'd chosen. Mia bustled around her, adjusting the veil and dabbing at her own tears. "You look like a princess," Mia said. "A really hot, successful, about to marry a billionaire princess." Scarlett laughed. "Thanks, Mia." The ceremony was held under a canopy of flowers, the sun setting behind the mountains. As Scarlett walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on Ethan, and the rest of the world fell away. He looked at her like she was the only person who'd ever mattered, and when she reached him, he took her hands, his grip steady and sure. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises of love, partnership, and a lifetime of adventure. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her with such tenderness that Scarlett felt tears slip down her cheeks. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and incredible food. Scarlett barely ate, too busy soaking in every moment. The way Ethan held her close during their first dance, the speeches from friends that made her cry and laugh in equal measure, the sparklers that lit up the night as they cut the cake. At the end of the evening, as they stood alone under the stars, Ethan pulled her close. "How do you feel, Mrs. Cross?" Scarlett smiled against his chest, like the luckiest woman alive. He kissed the top of her head. The feeling's mutual. Married life suited them. Ethan and Scarlett moved into a new penthouse, one they'd chosen together, with a kitchen Scarlett had designed herself, and a balcony big enough for morning coffee and evening stargazing. Ember continued to thrive, earning accolades and a loyal following. Scarlett even started developing a cookbook, a project that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. But life wasn't without its challenges. One afternoon, 6 months into their marriage, Scarlett received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, a man's voice greeted her, polite but firm. "Mrs. Cross? This is Daniel Hoffman from the IRS. We need to discuss some discrepancies in your restaurant's financial filings." Scarlett's stomach dropped. "Discrepancies? What kind of discrepancies?" "We'll need to schedule an audit. There are irregularities in your tax returns for the past year. This is routine, but it's important we address it promptly." Scarlett hung up, her hands shaking. She immediately called Ethan. "An audit?" Ethan's voice was calm, but she could hear the underlying tension. "Don't panic. This could be nothing. Or it could be something." Scarlett felt nauseous. What if I messed up? What if I owe money I don't have? "We'll figure it out," Ethan said firmly. "I'll call my accountant. We'll go through everything together." That night, Scarlett barely slept. The idea that she might lose Ember, the thing she'd worked so hard to build, was unbearable. The audit took weeks, every day a new layer of stress. Scarlett combed through receipts, invoices, and bank statements with Ethan's accountant, a sharp-eyed woman named Linda, who assured her that audits were rarely as catastrophic as they seemed. But Scarlett couldn't shake the fear. What if someone had sabotaged her? What if this was retaliation from a competitor or a critic who resented her success? Ethan stood by her through all of it, attending meetings, asking questions, holding her when she cried from sheer exhaustion. One evening, as they sat in Linda's office reviewing yet another stack of documents, Linda paused. "I found something," she said. Scarlett's heart stopped. "What?" "There's an error in the payroll filings. It looks like someone entered incorrect information, possibly intentionally." Linda looked at Scarlett. "Do you have any employees who might have access to these records?" Scarlett's mind raced. Tessa, her sous chef, handled some administrative tasks. But Tessa was loyal, trustworthy. Wasn't she? "I need to talk to my team," Scarlett said. The next day, Scarlett called a meeting with her staff. She didn't accuse anyone outright, but she explained the situation and asked if anyone had noticed anything unusual. Tessa's face went pale. "Scarlett, I think I might have made a mistake." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. "A few months ago, someone emailed me asking for payroll details. They said they were from the IRS, and I sent the information without double-checking. I'm so sorry." I didn't realize Scarlett felt a wave of relief mixed with frustration. "It's okay, Tessa. We'll fix this." But they had to work fast. Linda filed corrected returns, and after another agonizing week, the IRS closed the audit with minimal penalties. Scarlett had dodged a bullet, but the experience left her shaken. That night, she sat on the balcony, staring at the city. Ethan joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You okay?" She nodded. "Just thinking. About how fragile all of this is. Ember, us, everything we've built. One mistake, one bad actor, and it could all fall apart." Ethan took her hand. "Life's always fragile, Scarlett. That's what makes it precious. But you're stronger than you think. You faced this head-on, and you won." Scarlett leaned into him. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You'd have done it without me," Ethan said, "but I'm glad you didn't have to." A few months later, Scarlett's cookbook launched. The release party was held at Ember, and the turnout was overwhelming. Critics, fellow chefs, and fans crowded the restaurant, eager for signed copies. Scarlett stood at a table, pen in hand, smiling as person after person told her how much her recipes had inspired them. Ethan watched from the bar, pride radiating from him. At one point, Helen Park, the food critic who'd given Ember its first rave review, approached. "Scarlett," she said warmly, "this cookbook is phenomenal. You're going to change the way people think about home cooking." Scarlett flushed. "Thank you. That means everything coming from you." Helen leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I knew the first night I ate here that you were something special. The world's catching up now." As the evening wound down, Scarlett found Ethan on the balcony, watching the city lights. "Thank you," she said, slipping her arms around his waist. "For what?" "For everything. For believing in me when no one else did. For standing by me through the chaos. For being my partner in all of this." Ethan turned, pulling her close. "You don't have to thank me. Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done." They stood there, wrapped in each other, and Scarlett felt a deep, unshakable sense of peace. Life wasn't perfect. There would always be challenges, obstacles, moments of doubt. But with Ethan by her side, she knew she could face anything. A year later, Scarlett stood in the kitchen of Ember, preparing for a special dinner. Ethan had insisted on closing the restaurant for the night, reserving it just for the two of them. When he arrived, dressed in a suit that made her heart skip, he carried a single red rose. "What's all this?" Scarlett asked, amused. "Can't a man spoil his wife?" Ethan said, setting the rose on the counter. They sat at their favorite table, the one by the window, and Scarlett served the meal she'd prepared, a recreation of the dishes they'd shared on their first date at Marcello's. As they ate, Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand. "Scarlett, I've been thinking. About the future. About us." Scarlett's pulse quickened. "What about us? I want to start a family." The words hung in the air, and Scarlett felt tears prick her eyes. "You do?" Ethan nodded. "I know we've talked about it before, and I know the timing isn't perfect. But I can't imagine anything better than building a life with you. Not just a business or a home, but a family." Scarlett squeezed his hand. "I want that too." Ethan's face lit up, and he stood, pulling her into his arms. "Then let's do it. Let's build everything we've ever dreamed of." They kissed under the soft glow of the restaurant lights. surrounded by the smells of good food and the promise of a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibility. 2 years later, Scarlett stood in the nursery of their penthouse, cradling their 6-month-old daughter, Lily. The baby cooed softly, her tiny fingers wrapped around Scarlett's thumb. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, exhaustion etched into his features from a long day of meetings. But the moment he saw them, his expression softened into pure adoration. "There are my girls," he said, crossing the room to kiss Lily's forehead, then Scarlett's lips. "How was she today?" "Perfect," Scarlett said, though the dark circles under her eyes told another story. "She only woke up 3 times last night." "Only 3, Ethan said with a wry smile. "Progress." Scarlett laughed softly. Parenthood had been the most challenging and rewarding adventure they'd embarked on yet. Sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, the constant worry that they were doing everything wrong, but also moments of breathtaking joy. The first time Lily smiled, the way she grabbed onto Ethan's finger and refused to let go. The sound of her laughter, bright and pure. Ember had evolved too. With Tessa now managing day-to-day operations as head chef, Scarlett had stepped back slightly, focusing on creative direction and special events. She'd opened a second location, a smaller, more intimate space that specialized in tasting menus, and her cookbook had become a bestseller, leading to offers for a cooking show that she was seriously considering. But tonight, all of that felt distant. Tonight was just the 3 of them, a little family cocooned in their home. After putting Lily down, Scarlett and Ethan collapsed onto the couch, a bottle of wine between them. "Remember when our biggest worry was whether you'd burn the toast?" Scarlett teased. Ethan chuckled. "I've gotten better." "Marginally," Scarlett said with a grin. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of knowing each other deeply. "Can I tell you something?" Ethan said eventually. "Always. I never thought I'd have this." He gestured around them. "A family. A home. Someone who loves me not for what I've built, but for who I am." Scarlett reached for his hand. "You deserve all of it, Ethan. Every bit of happiness. So do you." He pulled her close, kissing her temple. "We've come a long way from that blackjack table in Vegas." Scarlett laughed. "We really have. Do you ever think about how different things would be if I hadn't walked into that casino?" "All the time," Ethan admitted. "And every time, I'm grateful I took that gamble." "Best bet I ever made," Scarlett agreed. A few months later, Ember's 2nd anniversary party was in full swing. The restaurant was packed with friends, family, and loyal customers. Scarlett moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and hugs, her heart full. Mia cornered her near the bar. "Look at you," she said, raising her glass. "Chef, wife, mother, best-selling author. What's next? World domination." Scarlett laughed. "Maybe. One step at a time." Maya's expression grew serious. "I'm proud of you, Scar. You've built something incredible. Not just the restaurant, but your whole life." Scarlett felt tears prick her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, or Ethan, or everyone who believed in me." Mia clinked her glass against Scarlett's. "Here's to more adventures, and fewer food critics from hell." "Agreed," Scarlett said, laughing. Later that night, after the guests had left and the staff had cleaned up, Scarlett and Ethan sat alone at their favorite table. The lights were dim, the restaurant quiet except for the hum of the city outside. "This feels full circle," Scarlett said. "Remember our first dinner here?" "How could I forget?" Ethan said. "I was terrified you'd say no to working for me." "And I was terrified you'd realize I had no idea what I was doing," Scarlett admitted. "But we figured it out," Ethan said. "Together." Scarlett reached across the table, taking his hand. "We did." and we'll keep figuring it out, whatever comes next." Ethan raised his glass. "To the future." "To us," Scarlett echoed. They toasted, their eyes locked. And in that moment, Scarlett felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Her life wasn't perfect. It was messy and chaotic and full of challenges. But it was hers, and it was beautiful. 5 years after that night in Vegas, Scarlett Hayes Cross had everything she'd ever dreamed of, and more. A thriving career, a family she adored, a partner who loved her fiercely, and a story that had started with a single, reckless bet and turned into a lifetime of love. Life settled into a beautiful, chaotic rhythm. Lily grew into a bright, curious toddler with Ethan's steel blue eyes and Scarlett's stubborn determination. She loved spending time in the restaurant kitchen, perched on a stool while Scarlett cooked, asking endless questions and helping by stirring empty bowls. One Saturday morning, Scarlett was testing a new dessert recipe when Lily tugged on her apron. "Mama, can I help?" Scarlett smiled, lifting her daughter onto the counter. "Of course, sweetheart. You can crack the eggs." Ethan appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, recording the scene. His girls in the kitchen, his favorite sight. "Be gentle with the eggs, Lily," he called out. Lily's face scrunched in concentration as she tapped an egg against the bowl. It exploded, shell and yolk everywhere. Scarlett laughed, wiping egg off Lily's face. "Good try, baby. We'll practice more." Ethan joined them, kissing Scarlett's cheek. Future chef in the making. Or future demolition expert, Scarlett joked. That afternoon, they visited the farmhouse where Ethan had proposed. It had become a regular retreat for them, a place to escape the city's noise and reconnect as a family. Lily ran through the wildflowers, her laughter echoing across the fields, while Scarlett and Ethan walked hand in hand. "I've been thinking," Ethan said, "about expanding. Not the business, the family." Scarlett stopped, turning to face him. "You want another baby?" Ethan's smile was tentative. "Only if you do. I know things are hectic already." Scarlett considered. Life was hectic, but it was also full. And the idea of giving Lily a sibling, of growing their family, felt right. "I think I do," she said. "Let's do it." Ethan pulled her into his arms, spinning her around. She laughed, her heart light. A year later, Scarlett gave birth to a son, Noah. He was calm where Lily was wild, thoughtful where she was impulsive. Ethan joked that Noah had inherited his strategic mind, while Lily had Scarlett's creative fire. Balancing 2 children, a restaurant, and her growing media presence was exhausting, but Scarlett thrived on the challenge. She launched her cooking show, Ember's Kitchen, which became a hit for its warm, accessible approach to gourmet cooking. Viewers loved her candor, the way she admitted mistakes and laughed at herself. One episode featured Ethan attempting to cook alongside her, resulting in burnt vegetables and a smoke-filled kitchen. The blooper reel went viral. "You've ruined my reputation," Ethan said, though he was laughing. "I'm never cooking on camera again." "You're great for ratings," Scarlett teased. "People love seeing the CEO who can't boil water." Through it all, Scarlett and Ethan remained each other's anchor. They made time for date nights, stealing away to quiet dinners or weekend getaways. They argued sometimes, over schedules and parenting decisions, and whose turn it was to change diapers. But they always came back to each other with love and patience. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, they sat on the balcony, watching the stars. "Do you ever miss the simplicity of before?" Scarlett asked. "Before kids? Before the chaos?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. But then I remember how empty my life felt before you, before them, and I wouldn't trade this for anything." Scarlett leaned her head on his shoulder. "Me neither." As the years passed, Ember's legacy grew. Scarlett opened a culinary school, offering scholarships to young chefs from low-income backgrounds, the same kids who reminded her of herself. She mentored dozens of aspiring cooks, sharing not just techniques, but the belief that talent and hard work could overcome any obstacle. Ethan's business flourished too, but he'd shifted his focus towards sustainable development, building eco-friendly hotels and affordable housing. Together, they used their success to give back, funding scholarships, supporting local businesses, and advocating for causes they believed in. Their love story, once dismissed as scandal, became an inspiration. Magazines wrote features about their partnership, both personal and professional. Young women approached Scarlett at events, thanking her for proving that you could have ambition and love, career and family, without sacrificing one for the other. But Scarlett never forgot where she'd started. On their 10th wedding anniversary, she and Ethan returned to Vegas. They stayed at the Bellagio, in the same suite where they'd spent that first unforgettable night. "Remember when you kissed me on that balcony?" Scarlett said, leaning against the railing, the city glowing below. Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind. "How could I forget? I was terrified you'd leave again." "I almost did," Scarlett admitted. "I thought it was safer to run than to risk getting hurt." "I'm glad you didn't." He turned her to face him. "Because you're the best thing that ever happened to me." Scarlett kissed him, slow and deep, tasting a decade of memories and promises. They spent the night reminiscing, laughing at how young and reckless they'd been, marveling at how far they'd come. The next morning, they visited the casino. Scarlett dragged Ethan to the blackjack table where they'd met. "Should we play?" she asked, eyes sparkling. "For old time's sake," Ethan laughed. "Only if you promise not to bet everything again." "No promises," Scarlett said, sliding into a seat. They played a few hands, losing more than they won, but it didn't matter. The thrill was in being there together, retracing the steps that had led them to this life. As they left the casino, hand in hand, Ethan said, "You know, I never thanked you." "For what?" "For taking a chance on me. For walking into that penthouse and turning my world upside down. For staying even when it was hard." Scarlett stopped, cupping his face. "You gave me everything, Ethan. A career, a family, a love I never thought I'd find. I should be thanking you." "Then let's call it even," Ethan said, kissing her forehead. "And keep building this life together." "Deal," Scarlett said. They flew home to their kids, their restaurant, their beautifully chaotic life. And as Scarlett tucked Lily and Noah into bed that night, reading them a story about adventure and bravery, she realized that her own story had become something beyond her wildest dreams. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, moments of doubt, times when she felt stretched too thin. But it was real. It was hers. And it was filled with more love than she'd ever imagined possible. Years later, when Lily and Noah were teenagers, and Ember had become a culinary institution, Scarlett sat down to write a memoir. She called it All In, a nod to that reckless bet in Vegas that had started everything. The book chronicled her journey from a struggling chef to a successful restaurateur, but at its heart, it was a love story. Not just her love for Ethan, but her love for food, for family, for the messy, beautiful unpredictability of life. On the day the memoir launched, Ethan threw a surprise party at Ember. The restaurant was filled with everyone who'd been part of their journey. Mia, now married with kids of her own. Tessa, who'd opened her own restaurant. Caroline, still efficient and unflappable. Marcello, who'd inspired Scarlett's love of Italian cuisine. As Scarlett stood to give a speech, she looked around the room, her heart full. 10 years ago, she began, I walked into a casino in Vegas and made the worst bet of my life. The crowd laughed. But then I met a man who changed everything. She found Ethan's eyes across the room. He taught me that taking risks isn't reckless if you're risking it for something worth having. And we built this, all of this together. Her voice cracked. So thank you. To everyone here, to everyone who believed in us. Thank you for being part of our story. The room erupted in applause. Ethan made his way to her side, pulling her into his arms. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, Scarlett said. Always. That night, after the guests had left, Scarlett and Ethan stood in the empty restaurant. The lights dim, the tables cleared. This is where it all began, Scarlett said softly. No, Ethan corrected. Vegas is where it began. This is where it grew. Scarlett smiled. You're right. And where does it end? Ethan pulled her close. It doesn't. This is just the beginning of the next chapter. They danced slowly in the empty dining room, no music except the hum of the city outside. Two people who'd bet everything on love and won. As the years continued to unfold, Scarlett and Ethan's life became a testament to the power of partnership. Their children grew, Lily pursuing culinary school like her mother, Noah showing an aptitude for architecture and design like his father. Ember expanded again, this time into a full hospitality brand, with Ethan's real estate expertise and Scarlett's culinary vision combining to create boutique hotels with world-class restaurants. But the heart of their empire remained that first small brick building where Scarlett had cooked her first dish as a professional restaurateur. They kept it unchanged, a shrine to humble beginnings and the courage it took to dream. One evening, decades after that night in Vegas, Scarlett and Ethan returned to Ember for a quiet dinner. Their hair was touched with silver now, their faces lined with years of laughter and life. But when they looked at each other, they saw the same people who'd met at a blackjack table all those years ago. Remember when you said you didn't cook? Scarlett teased, sipping her wine. I still don't, Ethan replied. But I've gotten very good at appreciating those who do. Scarlett reached across the table, taking his hand. Thank you for every day, every moment, every adventure. Ethan brought her hand to his lips. The pleasure has been entirely mine. They sat in the restaurant they'd built together, surrounded by memories and the promise of years still to come. Outside, the city glowed, alive with possibility, just like the night they'd first kissed on a Vegas balcony. And Scarlett realized that some bets weren't reckless at all. Some bets were destiny. Some bets were worth going all in for. Because when you found the right person, the right dream, the right life, the only real gamble was not taking the chance at all. And Scarlett Hayes Cross had never been afraid to take a chance. Not in the kitchen. Not in love. Not in life. She'd bet everything, and she'd won the jackpot. The end. Thank you for reading. On a scale from 0 to 10, what would you rate this story? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next incredible tale.